Hey, good people. Grits or cream of wheat? Who the hell is racist? Does anyone ever ask if they touch your hair?
Black Like Me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Black Like Me.
Hey, good people. Just want to say, first of all, I'm just so excited about the growth in our listenership for Black Like Me, but not only the growth of the listenership, but the growth within our Patreon supporters. These are folks who want to make sure that we continue to bring great programming, and they support us on a monthly basis. We've simplified it and we've updated Patreon. So if you've not yet taken a look at it, please do it. We have levels as low as $2. We want to make sure that that we have different ranges with different benefits and different levels. But again, it starts at $2 so that anyone who really wants to can really afford to be a part of our Black Like Me family and support team. While we're on the subject of Patreon, I want to welcome our newest Patreon supporter, Joan Fuller. Joan, thank you so much for hearing the call, for listening to the show, and for just wanting to show your support. Each time someone joins our Patreon group, it makes my day because it helps me to realize that this idea that I had for doing this program, offering this podcast is meaningful to folks. And they are saying, we want you to continue this and we want you to be able to continue to increase and enhance your reach and the quality of it. So Joan Fuller, thank you. Others, come on in, be a part of this family. We know you can do it. We know you want to, so we made it easier. Ever since I was a teenager, I've been intrigued with the idea of genealogy. I remember Alex Haley's miniseries Roots came out when I was in 8th grade. I did research at the State Historical Society here in Madison when I was 13 as a freshman in high school. It's always intrigued me. Well, recently I had this tremendous experience to do my DNA testing through AfricanAncestry.com prior to a trip to Ghana, and just finding out where my folks are from. It's just fantastic. So when I was in Africa, I found out that through my mother's lineage, we are from Guinea-Bissau and from the Balanta people. And I just recently tested my father's side, and I found that, well, you're going to have to subscribe to and listen to this upcoming episode in order to find out where my father is from and where the G people come from. You are going to be probably almost as surprised as I am. So you really want to subscribe and listen. And listen, I'm going to be talking with Dr. Gina Paige, who's the co-founder of AfricanAncestry.com. She's the only person in this world who does exactly what she does in this context for people of African ancestry. It is phenomenal. To my surprise, she has offered any folks of African descent a 10% discount on their African ancestry DNA testing. And all you have to do when you go to the site to do it, again, that's AfricanAncestry.com, is to use the promo code Black Like Me. Oh, yeah, I said it. How do you like me now? Black Like Me in the promo code, and you will receive a 10% discount. Listen, we want you to turn up the volume on this. We want you to listen closely. This is probably one of the most intriguing conversations I had because of the impact of her research on my own personal understanding of myself, my family, and our place and space in the world. Listen, let me know what you think about the episode. Share it with folks, retweet it, put it out there, because once you listen to this, you're going to understand why it's so important for people of African descent and people who love people of African descent to listen and to lean into this and to begin to understand their place in the world through a completely different lens and light. Take a listen. I know you're going to enjoy it. We just keep getting more and more impressive guests who are doing tremendous things. Today, our guest is Dr. Gina Paige, and she's one of my new heroes. I had a chance to meet her recently on a trip to Ghana for the Year of Return trip that about 250 of us took from the U.S. to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the transatlantic slave trade. And I got a chance to interact with her, first of all, through her company, AfricanAncestry.com. But then I got a chance to meet her on the trip She is the co-founder of AfricanAncestry.com. If my information is correct, I believe that she is the only woman of color who is one of the founders of any of the DNA companies, the major ones that you know about. She it just has an impressive resume. She studied economics. She studied at Stanford. She got her MBA, and she's really doing some exciting things to give back to our community. And I just want to tell you, African Ancestry is not to be confused with the other DNA companies. But I will tell you this, that some of the things that they're able to do that no other company can boast of is they identify your country of origin. They identify your African ethnic group. They have the largest database of African lineage. They do not sell or research your DNA, and it is 100% Black owned with Black scientists. And so I'm excited. She has used the testing of African ancestry to work with people and to help people find their origin. Folks like Oprah Winfrey, John Legend, Spike Lee, Condoleezza Rice. That's one of your fellow Stanford folks. I know she used to be on staff in Stanford. The King family, the Breakfast Club host, DJ Envy, Charlemagne the God, Angela Yee, and so interviews with big names like Jay-Z, Cardi B, all the Cory Booker, Bernie Sanders, Dennis Rodman, Samuel L. Jackson. And I just really, really appreciate her. Dr. Gina Paige, welcome to Black Like Me. It is an honor to have you here this morning, ma'am.
Oh, this is my favorite show just because of the name. Black Like Me.
I know, that's right.
I'm very happy to be here.
I am so glad to have you here. Listen, I have so many questions for you. And so just please know, if I'm firing them at you, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's just that there's so many things that you're able to speak into, and there's so many things that my listeners want to know about your work and your company and your research. And so I'll be throwing a number of things at you, and don't feel like you got to go for a long time on any of them, because I've got another one right up the sleeve. But one of the things I want to do, Dr. Paige, is with every guest, every Black guest, I do something that's called Black Icebreakers. Now, you're from the East Coast, so you all probably get, black ice from time to time. We live in black ice out here in Wisconsin. And I don't mean my family either. And so just a slick covering. But anyway, we use this rather than icebreakers, we call them Black Icebreakers. So I just got a couple of questions for you. There's no value judgment here. Just a couple of questions just for fun. You ready, Dr. Paige?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. Grits or cream of wheat while growing up?
Cream of wheat.
Cream of wheat? Are you serious?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Alert.
I didn't have grits until I was like 21 and visiting a boyfriend's family in Florida.
And so did you have it for dinner, like with fish or grits or something? I mean, with a shrimp or something? Or was it for breakfast?
No, at their house, it was for breakfast.
Okay, so did you try it with butter and sugar or butter and salt, or how did you eat your grits?
I think they were the sugar. They were the sugar people. That's when I learned it's either salt or sugar.
That's right, and you have to choose carefully. You have to choose carefully. But now, what was it about cream of wheat? Is it that it was faster? So many of my folks talk about grits, but lately I've been having a few people say cream of wheat. So is it because it was sweeter? Did you put butter and sugar in the cream of wheat?
You know what? My father made cream of wheat for me, and it was a treat. Like, instead of oatmeal, every now and then he would make cream of wheat. So I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I just know as a little kid, that's what I had with cream of wheat.
I got you. Sweet potato pie or pumpkin pie?
Oh, my gosh. That's sweet potato pie all day, every day.
Mayonnaise or Miracle Whip?
Neither. I don't like creamy stuff.
You don't like? Are you a hot sauce person? And if so, is it Tabasco or Frank's?
I'm not a hot sauce person either. I'm not that sophisticated. If I have some fish, whatever hot sauce is there, that's what I use.
Hey, when you were growing up, did you visit family that had plastic covers on their sofas?
Yes, my maternal grandmother had plastic covers on her sofas and her chairs in Philly.
Was it in her front room? What room did she call that?
Yeah, it was I don't remember what it was called, but it was definitely the living room, the first room you walked into.
And was it like a museum, like were you all allowed to actually sit in there? Or was it like one of those rooms that look really pretty and you save it until like the pastor or a politician come over for a special visit?
No, we used it. Used it. We were all up in it. Mm-hmm.
Now, you seem like you were the perfect child who never needed any type of discipline, but on the rare occasions where you might have needed discipline, did you ever receive something that Lalaida and I refer to as the syllable whooping or spanking, where your parents would say, "Didn't I tell you to get in this?" Did you ever get any spanking that consisted of syllables? You didn't get those. You were good.
I was good.
You were good.
I didn't get spanked.
You got time out.
I don't remember getting spanked.
Oh my God!
You know what? I probably did. I had a really
You blacked
smart
out.
mouth.
You passed out, and you didn't remember you got that spank.
I did get talked to, but I don't remember getting spanked.
Oh my goodness! Oh, hey, have you ever gone cross country skiing, downhill skiing, or water skiing?
I've been downhill skiing and I've been water skiing.
I knew you were going to say one of them. I knew you were going to say one of them. I've done cross country skiing. I'm afraid of water skiing. I can swim, but I just don't want to be out there with rocks and fish and stuff like that. All right. Let me see if I got anything else. Let me see. Are you old enough to remember Soul Train? You remember what day of the week it came on?
Saturday morning.
That's right. Wait, did you all watch it while you were cleaning the house, or did you just get to have the luxury of just sitting down, or did you have to be cleaning while you watched it?
I think we got to. I'm an only child, so I had the luxury of watching it. I didn't have to do anything while I watched it.
See, now I know why you didn't get them syllable whoopings, because Jack and I only have one child. You had a chance to meet my daughter Lexi, and she does not even know what a syllable whooping is. She does not even know what a silent whooping is. She doesn't even understand that whole concept. She just needs a good talking to. Thank you.
You know, I had friends who got whipped with the tracks. The
Hot Wheel tracks? Hot Wheel tracks, the orange ones.
And I would always just slide out of the room when
they did that.
Ready to get there.
Let me tell you, those things put whelps on you. Mothers and fathers can go to jail for that. I used to love and hate opening up Mattel Hot Wheels because I realized that when I was good, they could do the loopity-loop. I don't know what in the heck possessed my mama to pick up an orange track and whoop my behind. I think I went into ministry at 6 because I wanted a conversion experience so that my mama would not beat me anymore with my Hot Wheel tracks. I forgot. I'm going to add that one to my list. Hey, Eli, we need to add that to the list. Hot Wheel track. Have you ever been beat with a Hot Wheel track? That's my black. That's oh my goodness. Dr. Paige, thank you so much I always do that because it's fun just to lighten things up. And it's for me, what it shows, and our listeners have noticed this, that places where we have these commonalities, like you grew up, did you grow up on the East Coast?
I grew up in D.C.
In D.C., okay.
Capital City.
Sure, yes it is. And I grew up in Chicago, but it's interesting that as soon as you said Hot Wheel tracks, I saw the orange track, I saw my brown leg with some purple on it. And it's just interesting to me that regardless of where the diaspora has taken us, there's some things that really hold us together culturally. So I love the Black Icebreaker because the non-African American listeners are just asking themselves, how do they all have those similar experiences living, miles and miles from each other? So thank you for participating. Yeah. I'm going to get into the African ancestry questions and things around the year of return. But you certainly have no pun intended, an entrepreneurial DNA. In you. But how were those entrepreneurial chops demonstrated as a child? Because I found that when people really break into being entrepreneurial as an adult, I find out that they probably sold Girl Scout cookies or they had lemonade stands or something as a kid. Were you entrepreneurial as a child or innovative?
I was.
Really?
I was.
Give me an example.
My cousin and I, we had a lemonade stand, and then there's an amusement park here, in Virginia, it used to be called King's Dominion. Now it's Six Flags, and I'm old enough to have been a little kid when the park opened. And so we wanted to go, and our parents were like, well, you need the $5 that it costs to get in. So we wrote a magazine.
Only $5. You did what?
Exactly.
You wrote a magazine?
We wrote a magazine. Mm-hmm. We wrote a magazine, and this is what's so funny. They printed it. They made the copies, and we sold it to them and their friends. But we made our $5, and we went to King's Dominion.
Oh my! See, I love hearing that. Part of my passion is studying leadership development, and there's something in my studies that was called sovereign foundations, and it means if you talk to people long enough, you probably will find indicators of areas of passion. A proficiency as a child that you'll see threads of into adulthood. So I love that. Dr. Paige, I first found out about AfricanAncestry.com as I was getting ready for the Jamestown project, a friend of mine who's actually a white woman told me about the trip. I just was out of that particular loop. I didn't understand it. I didn't know about it. But as my family registered, because I went to Ghana with my wife, my daughter, and my sister, we found out that there was this that you can opt to have your DNA tested. And I've been wanting to do this. I actually had one of the kits in my home from one of the other companies. In fact, it's still in my home unopened. Nothing's wrong with it, but I realized that I wanted to learn more about my African ancestry. So we did the swab test back in June because our trip was in August to get it all sent out by a particular date. But that's how I really found out about AfricanAncestry.com. And so I want to ask you, my first question is, what was your involvement with the Jamestown trip? Because, we took the test, but I did not expect the co-founder to be on the trip with us. So tell us a little bit about your involvement with Jamestown this summer.
So that trip was created by Diallo Sumbri, who's the CEO of the Adinkra Group here in D.C. And the Adinkra Group is a cultural resource company. And so we've been partnering over the past couple of years with the Adinkra Group on different trips that they would sponsor. Mm-hmm. People on the trip would take our test, and then we would travel with them to reveal their ancestries, in the country. And so when the Jamestown to Jamestown trip was being formed, it was just a no-brainer. I mean, you're going to take 250 Black people to Africa with the NAACP. They need to know where they're from. You have to do that. And so this was probably my 5th time traveling to Ghana with the Adinkra Group. So I was kind of like, okay, Ghana again. But the minute I saw all of you on that trip, I was reminded of how exciting it was going to be and why it was important for me to be there myself.
Wow, that's a really powerful thing. And so tell me a little bit about how African Ancestry was founded, because it was founded in 2003. Am I getting my information right, Dr. Paige?
Yeah, we'll be 17 in February.
Exactly. And people weren't really thinking and talking that much, at least in our community, about ancestry. We talked about Alex Haley and roots and things like this, but I've always wanted to know, after finding out about the Mandiga, Kunta Kinte and, his roots and the story and all of that, I've always wanted to know where I was from. And so I didn't know that there was a way of finding that out. How did you stumble on to this technology, this science, this research, the business background and economics background? Why ancestry and DNA testing? How did that all come about for you?
My business partner and co-founder, Dr. Rick Kittles, is a well-known African-American geneticist. And long story short, he was part of the New York African Burial Ground Project on a team from Howard. And he was charged with identifying the ancestry of the bones that were uncovered in this cemetery of enslaved Africans in Lower Manhattan.
Right.
And so it made the media, and when the community found out that he could do this for bones, they figured it should be easier for him to do it for living people. And so Howard University actually got inundated with calls and requests for him to trace their ancestry. Well, he's a scientist. He's a researcher. His focus is the genetics of diseases that disproportionately affect our community, like prostate cancer, diabetes, and the such. He couldn't manage that demand. I was introduced to Dr. Kittles by a colleague, and I saw the opportunity to commercialize his research using the skill set that I had invested in educationally and in corporate America to bring this brand new product to market, because nothing like this ever existed ever before in life. No iteration, nothing.
Really?
For the benefit of a group of people that I'm passionate about, which is Black people.
Right. That's really amazing. So 2003, when you explained this to your parents, to your friends, to your family, that you are co-founding this organization that would take a look at DNA of folks of African descent, did people get what you were saying? Did they understand the importance, or did they say, who's going to use that? Who's going to buy that? What's that going to do? Did you have those kinds of questions?
Actually, Actually, I did not, because as I told you, I grew up in Chocolate City. My parents were in college at Howard when I was born. So I've grown up around Black people who have a very high level of achievement, professional achievement, educational achievement, and Black consciousness. And so they were excited that I had chosen to do this. Now, of course, you know, as parents, my mother was kind of like, you know, how you going to earn a living,
right.
that kind of thing. But in terms of the actual business itself, they were extremely supportive.
Wow. So now,
and still are to this day.
Well, I know they've got to be, because I mean, when you look at where the company is gone and where it's going, they've got to be proud. I'm so proud. So part of what African Ancestry is able to boast of, based on my research and even conversations I remember us having on some of the bus trips or the tours that we were part of in Ghana, is that the database that you use to compare DNA in order to help folks of African descent find where they're from is just vast. It's many times more than what the other groups use. So just tell me a little bit about your company and its approach to be able to have cornered such a market on African DNA. Just tell me a little bit about that specialization and the decision to do that and become that. Just tell me a little bit about that, so people who are listening are understanding, if I'm Black, I need to do my ancestry through this group and not other groups, because this is what they're able to do. Can you just tell me a little bit about that, and then we'll talk more about our trip to Ghana?
Sure. So the way that all ancestry DNA testing companies work is they take a person's DNA, they unlock the code of a certain portion of the DNA, and then they compare that code to the code of people all over the world.
Gotcha.
And so if you're looking for health traits, then you need the codes from people all over the world, those same health trait codes from people all over the world. If you're looking for ancestry, then you need the same ancestry codes from people all over the world.
Sure.
So there's a company, 23andMe,
sure,
and they compare your DNA, your code, to the DNA of 621 Africans.
600.
So from the entire continent of Africa, they've divided it into 9 regions as of today, as of this conversation. And across those 9 regions, they have 621 people. So they're looking for a match for you among those people.
Wow. All right.
AncestryDNA.com, they do the same thing. They take your code and they compare it to the codes from 1,395 Africans.
All right.
So they have twice as many people, the same 9 regions of Africa. So what happens with those 2 tests is every Black person gets some percentage of ancestry from each West African region.
All right.
Basically telling you that you're West African.
Right.
But we already know that.
Right.
We don't need DNA to tell us that.
Right.
History tells us that.
Right.
We come from West Africa.
Right.
What you wanted to know was, I'm assuming, what you wanted to know was, who were the people that I share ancestry with?
Exactly.
What were their values?
Exactly.
What were their traditions? What were their practices, their beliefs? Well, a percentage from different regions doesn't answer that question. When you come to African Ancestry, when you came to African Ancestry, we took your code and we didn't look at all of your DNA. We only looked at DNA that you inherited from your mother's 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 mother, all the way back 2,000 years, or your father's 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 ancestry, all the way back 2,000 years. So a very specific part of your DNA, and then we compared it to those same codes from over 33,000 Africans.
Wow.
Not from regions, but from 40 of the countries, all of West and Central African countries.
Wow.
And even more specifically, 400 ethnic groups or tribes within those countries. So for you, or for Oprah, we were able to say she shares maternal genetic ancestry, not percentages, just her maternal ancestor was a Pele woman living in Liberia. So before, I can't remember where she's from, before Mississippi or Alabama or wherever.
Right, she's from Mississippi.
That woman, Mississippi, that woman was in Liberia, and her genetics are shared with the Pele people. Or like with Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther.
Sure.
He shares maternal, not everything, just his mother's line, ancestry with the Limba people living in Sierra Leone today. That's a very different piece of information,
of course,
than just saying you're some percentage this, some percentage that.
No, that's a very good explanation. And the fact that it's compared with 33,000 individuals as opposed to 621 or 1,395. I want to get my numbers right, too.
Big difference.
Big difference. You said 400 tribes? You got you. And then you said it looks at over...
And 40 countries.
And 40 countries. That's amazing. And so...
And if I could just add...
No, please.
Speaking to our motivation for this is we were motivated by the fact that as Black people in the diaspora, we are the original victims of identity theft.
Yeah, come on now. Yeah.
We don't know our names. There were no G's in Guinea-Bissau. There were no Paiges in Nigeria. There were no Bosemans in Sierra Leone. Those are not our names.
Those are not.
We lost our languages.
You're right.
We lost the freedom to venerate and honor our ancestors, and our families got completely torn apart repeatedly over the course of 400 years. And so none of the things that identify us as people were there.
Right.
And they're still not there until we reconnect. So it was important to us to gather as much African DNA as possible so that we could give people who look like us that sense of connection that is specific to who we are. It's great that we claim Africa. That's the biggest continent. It's the best continent. It's the
richest continent.
The mother of all things.
Right.
But it's not enough to just say, "Oh, well, I'm Mandingo. I'm from where Kunta Kinte is from," or whatever.
You're right.
That satisfies you as an 8-year-old, but not as an adult.
Exactly. Dr. Paige, there's something you said at the Cape Coast slave dungeon. I don't want to call it a castle because it was a slave dungeon. And we walked through that place. And I've done, Leleda and I had a process. We processed the trip. I wrote about 3 essays. I'll send those to you. I wrote about 3 essays about my trip. One of them I called "Colonizer, Please," just a recap of history of the 400 years. But after we walked through those gruesome cells and we were told about what happened to our ancestors being marched up to 300 miles in chains. We saw the slave river. We saw where people were branded and separated from their families and the door of no return. We went through all of that. But the planners or the organizers of the Adinkra group told us to wear white that day. And, being a pastor, that kind of felt like first Sunday. When you're told to wear white, that it's a memorial service, a homegoing, or something very important. So we sat together and we were all grouped. And I remember clearly what you said. You said, the quote you did about identity theft, you said, they took everything from us but our DNA, and now we have that. I felt like I was in church. Chills went through that place, the way you set that up. And then you even got emotional at the reveal. And tell me why that was, because I know this is what you do for a living. But when you told us that, sitting on top of the dungeons, after seeing the horrible things that were done to our folks, and the fact that we as Black folks basically chartered a plane, we were 98% of the plane, flew back 400 years later to show the strength and the resilience of Black folks. So while sitting in that same space where we were divided and shipped all over the world like FedEx products or boxes, you had the chance to tell us, but we now have information so we can root you in the motherland. It was so powerful, but because this is your work, it still moved you. You got choked up. Why was that?
I get choked up every single time, and I tell you, I've only just recently figured it out. And my explanation is that it's the ancestors.
Wow.
Because what I realized, and others have helped me get there, is that every time someone takes our test, we have connected them to an ancestor.
Yes.
An ancestor who has never been venerated or has not been venerated properly. Now, we'll never be able to tell you the name of that ancestor, but we have connected you to her spirit or to his spirit.
Yes.
So imagine now all of the people we've tested, I have all of their ancestors happy and excited and drawn to me and my team, but I'm out front, so drawn to me with that energy because look, they're just so happy with the work that I'm doing, that my team is doing, and so that becomes overwhelming.
Yes,
it's like all of this noise. I don't see faces. I don't hear words. I don't hear thoughts. It's just like a pressure. And we weren't supposed to be there.
Right.
We were not supposed to be there. The whole basis of slavery was disconnection.
Yes.
So we weren't even supposed to be, there's not supposed to be an NAACP. There wasn't supposed to be 250 Black people who could afford to fly and travel for 10 days in the continent. We were not supposed to be in that space, but we're there. And not only were we there, we were reclaiming our connection to those spirits.
You better come on and preach, sister. You better break that down.
That's what gets me. I have no control over it. Sometimes I'm standing there like, Gina, stop crying. Get it together.
Stop this.
I'm talking to myself like, get it together, and I can't. Because I'm not in control at all.
Wow.
Hi, this is Jeremy Holiday, and I'm one of the editors of the Black Like Me show, and I just want to take a minute now to talk to you a little bit about Patreon. The show that we put together here is the culmination of an effort of a lot of people, and in order to do it, we need your support. We've been working for a while to come up with a Patreon that works well for people, and the levels that existed before, we recently added the $2 level, which is there for you if you like the show and you just want to give a little bit of support. It's cheaper than a cup of coffee. I mean, I don't think you can find a cup of coffee anywhere or half a cup of coffee for $2. And we have a $6 level where you'll get a shout out on the show, a $10 level where you could submit questions to Dr. G and he'll respond to them, and then the $25 level, which is whenever we have a live event, you get a VIP invite, and whenever we start producing merch, you get that merch as well. So if you like what you hear on the show and you want to support it, go to patreon.com/blacklikeme and check out the levels to see if one fits for you. Now back to Dr. G.
So how have you benefited personally by knowing more about where you're from? Because your country of origin is Nigeria. Am I getting that right? So how you know?
I've traced the same two tests that you've taken with us. My mother has taken and my father has taken.
Wow.
Those lineages both go back. One goes back to the Fulani people in Nigeria, and the other goes back to the Hausa people in Nigeria.
Wow. And that sense of purpose and knowing where you're from has helped you to think about you differently, your family, your world, their family's resilience differently by knowing that and being connected to your ancestors?
I think it has. So I would have to say, so I'm an entrepreneur, and for the majority of these 16 plus years, I've been very focused on the business and on making sure that all of you get what you need, and not so focused on myself and how my specific ancestry has made me feel. But I can tell you that as I've learned, for example, the Fulani people, they live by a code of ethics called the Pulaku. And there are things in that code around personal responsibility, courage, that kind of thing that help. That I'm like, oh, okay. So these things that we think we got from our mother or our grandmother or her mother really came from way farther back.
Way back.
And we just didn't know the origin.
Wow. Now, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Please go ahead. You're saying something else?
No, that's just an example of how it's impacted me. But I think overall, just the fact that I am the only person in the world who does what I do.
Wow.
There's no one else world who does what I do.
No one else in the world.
And that, no one, even my business partner doesn't do what I do.
Right. I love it. And
so that is what has impacted me the most, I think, about this African ancestry experience. And that's a whole nother conversation, but the realization of that is pretty heavy.
Sure.
And, but also inspiring at the same time.
I mean, in some ways, Dr. Paige, it's like a calling. I mean, the things that you can unlock in people's own DNA. Again, just my theological perspective is that we're called to be doctors, scientists, entrepreneurs, business leaders, because it takes all of that to really help the world to move and sync and rhythmically. So I love it when people stand in their own space and own and claim that. I think that's so important. Part of my own research about my family on this side of the lake. I live in Madison. We're surrounded by 4 lakes. On this side of the ocean has taken me back to Mississippi and Virginia, where I found that the origins of my name G is really Welsh. Probably traces back to France, but what I found is that my great-great-great-grandfather was named Reuben Joshua G. And he was a slave owner, and he had a wife. But he raped one of his slaves. He had a relationship with her, or a sexual interaction. He raped her. This is in 1840, so there's no way it was consensual. She was chattel property, so I don't even try to sweeten it up and make it like a Nicholas Spark story. She was raped. But her son, Henderson G., is my grandfather's grandfather. I've been able to find his gravesite. I actually found the graves of some of his white half brothers, and I've actually met some of the descendants of Henderson's white brother. His name was Robert G. It was Robert Lafayette. They called him RLG. I've actually been able to develop not only a connection but a relationship with some of those white descendants, and we're actually trying to figure out what does this mean for us to speak into the healing of America's racial divide, because our family embodies the truth about chattel slavery, ownership, rape, and all of these different things. And so on that level, I've done a couple of episodes. NPR has caught some of the study that I've been doing. It's been very powerful. But when I was at Cape Coast and you called a group of us out to talk about our mother's lineage, we found out that Laleda and I found out that we were from Guinea-Bissau, and that we were part of the Balanta group. And there was actually a brother in that group. His name was Daryl. We found out that we were cousins. We actually keep in touch with each other, hung out at the airport, flew back together, have been in touch. I'm trying to get out to New York to visit them. But that sense of being connected someplace geographically in Africa was almost a spiritual experience. When I came back, I told friends about the trip. It took me a while to process it, but I said, I feel bubble wrapped. They said, what do you mean bubble wrapped? I said, I feel like when you put bubble wrap around something that's fragile, when you bump it, it doesn't feel the impact. And things that would normally set me off or anger me, and there's still disparity, so I'm not oblivious to those things, but the deep impact does not hit me the same, because in one of my poems, I said, I didn't realize how homeless I was until the elders in Ghana said, welcome home. I didn't know that I was missing that until they said, welcome home. And whatever the opposite is of the sunken place, whatever the inverse of that, I went up someplace, I went into something. But to feel a part of something that's larger than chattel slavery in Leake County, Mississippi, was eye-opening, it was healing, it was therapeutic, and it was soul medicine. And so I've been researching Balanta people and finding out what that's like and what that's about. And what folks don't know, what listeners don't know is that AfricanAncestry.com ran my father's DNA, because I didn't think to do that for the trip. So in a few minutes, Dr. Paige is actually going to walk me through this. I have not opened it. I received it on my 56th birthday 2 weeks ago, so I have not looked at it. But off the top of your head, is there anything you remember about the Balanta people, Dr. Paige? That's where my mother was from. I think you said one of the key words was resistance. But do you remember anything else about?
Yeah, I know specifically that the Balanta are those who resist. I think that's actually what the word means, is those who resist. And
I love it.
It's so funny when you reveal that to certain people, it's just so clear. Even though I don't know the people, It's just so I'm not at all surprised that you that you come from a lineage of people who resisted.
Yeah,
I find Guinea-Bissau to be a very interesting country because it's so small, and it was colonized by the Portuguese.
Right.
And they were among the most vicious. If there are degrees of viciousness,
Right.
they were considered to be among the most vicious of the
Slave
colonizers.
owners and
so it's amazing that people resisted them, but in that resistance still lost and still ended up here.
Right. But survived. But survived, which is a strong form of resistance. So do you mind if I open up my envelope now, or do you want to? How do I do this? You want to tell me where I'm from? Should I open the envelope? I'm nervous.
The thing is while you were talking, so I was a little anxious about this reveal, but then as you just talked about your family history, you already know where your paternal lineage goes back to. Because what we traced was the G male line. Right. And so you already know.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Y'all.
See, this is why you should have called me before you got that test.
Wait a minute. Okay, now talk to me about it. Okay, let me just
sat here and gave us the history of the G male line. Me and all your listeners.
That's right. When I talked about going back to, but I thought, okay, wow. All right, so by analyzing your Y chromosome DNA, we have determined that you share paternal genetic ancestry with people in Spain. Today. Wait a minute.
So we found people in Spain today who have the same Y chromosome markers as you.
And that's southern Spain. That's South Spain. That's southern Spain, right? No, it's Portuguese.
But listen, you already said that the G name is a Welsh name,
right?
And that you think that it goes back to France,
right?
You said that. So this actually, our DNA research confirmed that it's European, and we found people today who have that same Y chromosome structure as you living in Spain.
That's what you're right. You're right, because when I think about my father's father, which is Henderson G, his father was Reuben. So I'm still thinking. So the trace of my family back to Africa is through Reuben's mother, who's Venus, who probably was part native. So I see what you're saying. But if we're going back to the father's father, then that gets back to Reuben. So I actually know something about our ancestry that my white relatives who are G's don't understand. Spain. This is so interesting.
And what I will tell you is that this is where people are today.
Sure.
So it could be that the people were Welsh or, were French or whatever, but today they are living in Spain and are claiming that they are Spanish. But, there's not a whole lot of genetic diversity. Well, let me rephrase that.
Sure.
There's not as much genetic diversity among Europeans as there is among Africans. So a lot of times we find, based on the type of testing we do, we find matches in Europe across several different countries because it's just not that diverse in terms of the type of DNA we look at.
Right.
Now, if you go to one of these other companies that has millions of white people in their database, and, then you could probably find other G's and, see where they live. But in terms of what we do, and this is not unusual.
No. I'm excited
because 35% of the black men that take our test, 35% of them that take the paternal test get a European result
because of slavery and because of slave trade.
Right.
So I just gotta say for our listeners, yo tengo un sorpresa. Mi familia es de la país de España. And so I had to just say to folks, you know what? I almost majored in Spanish. I mean, what I mean is I've always been drawn to that culture. I've always wanted to go to Barcelona. I've always wanted to visit Madrid. I almost majored in Spanish in college. So it's interesting that there are few places around the world that I really wanted to go to, but I've always been drawn to the Mediterranean, but always have been drawn for some reason to Spain. always, and when I'm visiting, my accent's pretty decent. Like, I'm not fluent, but I can function in Spanish-speaking countries. And people ask me where I'm from because of my accent. They think I'm Dominican or Cuban.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just interesting that of all the countries in Europe, I don't feel a draw to them the way I have Spain and Greece. So those two and Italy to some extent have just spoken to me. This is really interesting. Wow.
And Spain was very close to Africa. So
yes, it was. That's why I said,
funny.
Yeah, that's why my mama said that's why they so dark in them. She said that exactly. She said, my mom says, why the Italians and the Greek, why they have that dark skin, because they used to swim across that body of water to go see our women. That's why they so dark down there. But this is interesting. But 35% of black men who do this, you said, have some
who do the
paternal testing.
Paternal test.
Gotcha.
Because we use the Y chromosome, and so if British, or we'll use you for example, if a Spanish slave trader or slave owner fathered a son with an enslaved woman, while the son's going to be considered black, and he's going to have black sons who have black sons who have black sons, when we trace the Y chromosome, it goes back to the Spanish forefather.
Wow. So I've got to study
that. And so because that happens so much, so with such frequency, that's why we find. So that's why when you guys came for Jamestown to Jamestown, you were encouraged to do the maternal line.
Sure, and I totally get that.
Yeah, the maternal line comes back African 92% of the time.
Except in my wife's case, and she's okay with me talking about this. But Jackie, we found out that her ancestry went back to the Middle East.
Right.
And so she said, she told me to ask you while I'm on air. She wants me to ask Dr. Paige, is there another link or DNA, something that can be unlocked to check any of the other grandmothers, to just kind of find some place to land in Africa? But that was just really, really a shock that we have lineages in us as black people that have not necessarily originated in Africa.
Right. And if we go back 100,000 years, everybody who's listening to your show comes from Africa.
That's what we've been trying to tell them.
What we're answering is the question of where were my people right before the slave trade. So we're looking at recent historical time period of 500 to 2,000 years.
Wow.
And so for Leleda, we could absolutely trace another branch of her tree, and I would suggest we trace her paternal grandmother's line. So stick with the maternal line, but do it from her father's side. And
gotcha.
I feel, she still has that same 92% chance that that'll be an African result.
So still looking at her maternal line.
And we can talk about,
right.
But right, for her father. And we can talk about who's the person to take the test.
Sure.
Because she can't take it.
Right.
We need a different
Yes. No, that's great. That's great. She'd really enjoy that. My goodness.
That's what you should have done.
I know.
You should have done that one.
I should have done it, but
I'm
not. I'm about to become a DNA junkie. So y'all are not through with me. Y'all gonna be able to ruin me if you want. You're gonna have so many samples up there of Alex G. What's your hope for?
But what's important, Alex G, is that we destroy your DNA.
Yeah, that's right. I shouldn't even say that.
We won't have the samples of you.
That's right. Okay.
And we're very different than our competitors in that we don't sell or research or share our customers' DNA.
And may I say I appreciate that, because enough has been stolen from us as black people. We do not need the information that unlocks truth about our health, traits, origin. We do not need that out there like unshredded documents. Dr. Paige, so what's your hope for Ancestry, AfricanAncestry.com, in the future? Do you want people who find out that they're Balanta or Fulani to be able to connect with each other? Let's say if we find out we're from the same region or something, are you envisioning a way for us to find each other through a network or a website or something to begin to build better bridges? What's your hope and dream for the future with your work?
So the future is bright, and it has many components. In fact, in the present, we have an online community on Facebook. It's an exclusive community, so you can only join it if you've taken our test. And that's a space where we're finding thousands of people are sharing information and resources their groups and their countries and what they're doing, right? So if they're
I'll join that.
traveling, they're putting in those tips, all of that. The second thing that we're doing for next year, for 2020, is we're launching African Ancestry Family Reunions. And those are specially curated birthright journeys for people who've taken our test. We'll take you to your country of ancestry as a group.
Really?
And have a unique experience around the ethnic groups that you share ancestry with. They won't be the standard tourist trips. Although I have to say, there probably aren't very many African Americans traveling to countries other than Ghana, Senegal, on the West Coast, maybe the Ivory Coast. So there is no real standard because we're not doing it in most of the countries.
Sure.
And then longer term, what we want to do, and you alluded to it, so just like today, we use DNA to help Black people with their psychological well-being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We want to be able to use DNA to help Black people with their physical well-being. Because the truth of the matter is that precision medicine is here. And precision medicine, in order for it to work, research needs to be done on your genetic information so that you can have medicine that works for you. Mm-hmm. But because of the history of how our information has been treated, we're very hesitant to participate in the research. So our goal, our hope and dream, and it is going to happen, is that African Ancestry be seen after now 17 years as a credible resource that honors and protects your genetic information while at the same time giving you useful data from it that you can use to live a healthier life. We're not going to change the way we eat. We're not changing the way we exercise and our lifestyles, and we can't change our environment. So we're going to need medicine. And if we're going to need medicine, then we deserve to have medicine that works for us. So what better way than to have a Black-owned company that employs all Black scientists doing that work to improve the health and well-being of the Black community. That's our vision.
That's a fantastic vision. So you're right, by understanding where we're from and finding ways to use a phrase I used earlier, to sort of bubble wrap ourselves, that through self-awareness and knowledge, we can take the blows of microaggressions and things that we experience on a daily basis in this life. But you're saying your vision is to take this to a whole nother level where we're able to really to speak to our physical health so that we can live longer, more productive lives and stop leading in all the areas of these sick degenerative diseases that we lead on, that we can begin to change that and get the right medicine so that we can step out of some of the stress-induced and related illnesses and live the full lives we were created to live. That's a beautiful vision.
Exactly.
That is really beautiful.
And other companies are already doing it. 23andMe, when you send your DNA to them, they're using it.
That's what I heard. So that's not rumor.
I don't know that you are directly benefiting from it.
No.
But they're using it because whatever they can figure out on us, a.k.a. Tuskegee, a.k.a. Henrietta Lacks, it'll work for everyone else.
Yes. Wow. Well, I just want you to know I'm blown away. The more I know about my background, it helps me to just maintain each day and to know how to conduct myself with a greater sense of purpose and personal celebration. So I just want you to know that I appreciate your work and your research, your entrepreneurial DNA, that in 2003, when many of us were not thinking about the future of this, that you and your colleague were thinking about ways of serving people of African descent. I just think it's brilliant. I think it's generous, and I think it's so important. And I know you probably already know this, but when you all do begin to put those trips together, those family reunions, we definitely want to go to Guinea-Bissau, because I'm finding out that I'm wanting to understand more and more about that. I also want to spend more time in Ghana because that was my first time to West Africa. I've been to South Africa 3 times, but my first time to West Africa, I was just blown away by the beauty, the strength, and the preponderance of Blackness that just spoke to my heart so much. But just please know that when you all are thinking about those trips, I know Guinea-Bissau is a small group, but because we went through a lot with the Portuguese, you all need to make sure that we're part of the early family reunion group. So the last ones out need to be the first ones in.
And there are a lot of you guys. Guinea-Bissau is one of the countries we find the most often. The challenge with Guinea-Bissau is there's no diplomatic presence in the United States.
Really?
And right now they're having a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of challenges, I'll say.
Sure.
With the government so I think when people have gone individually, they haven't had a problem, but we're trying to figure out how is it that we can take a group and be responsible for them in a country with no U.S. presence. So we're figuring it out, but
I know you are.
You're going to trace other lineages too, so you'll probably find your way on another trip.
Oh, definitely. I'm going to get on one of those trips. Just real quickly, and you may not know this from the top of your head, Dr. Paige, but 500, 700 years ago, the lines between Guinea-Bissau and Senegal might not have been as defined as they are now. And so I know that there wasn't one great West African group, but like in regions where the Balanta people are from, do you find that group has really moved outside of what's defined as Guinea-Bissau now? Like, are you finding that, that they, years ago that might have been part of Senegal or part of other parts of West Africa?
So that's a great question. You're absolutely right. These borders are present-day borders that have been artificially and politically drawn. So what is Guinea-Bissau today was part of a larger region that encompasses Guinea, it encompasses Senegal. And so I don't know about the Balanta people specifically, but that's something I'm going to research.
Sure.
But all one region.
With different,
and then just the people have different customs and traditions, kind of like you can live in the Midwest,
sure,
but be from Wisconsin or be from Illinois, or you can live in Wisconsin, but one of your family members goes to a Baptist church, another one goes to an AME church, another one goes to a, Kojic church.
That's
so there's
right.
different beliefs, different social groups, cultural groups, but the genetics are the same. So
that's really helpful.
There is definitely that to consider.
And which also speaks to the beauty of what African Ancestry does, because you look not only at country of origin, but you identify ethnic groups within that, which is very important because you're right, Guinea-Bissau was not always defined geographically as Guinea-Bissau, but connecting my heritage to the Balanta people helps me to identify with those uniquenesses of that particular group, whether they were part of Senegal or wherever. That roots me in some ways even more broadly than the geographical location. It roots me in culture and practices and temperament, which is very, very useful. I love that. But Dr. Paige, I want to thank you so much for your time. I also want to say to folks who are listening, if you are Black and you're if you're of African ancestry or suspect that you are African ancestry, particularly if you may be African American and you were adopted by another group or in foster care, just don't know enough about your background, you need to go to AfricanAncestry.com. You need to do it today. African Ancestry has not paid for this. They have not asked me to do this. I might even be embarrassing Dr. Paige by saying it, but you need to really go. Don't tell yourselves it's not important, because our white friends know where they're from. Our Asian American friends know where they're from. Our Latino friends know where they're from. Our Native American friends can tell you what tribe, what group, what area. We're the folks walking around here who built this country, and we don't know where we're from. And we may feel like it's embarrassing to not know, and so we don't want to go through these steps of finding out where it is. We can boast that we've done those other groups, and I'm not bashing them, but it doesn't help me in life to know that I've got this percentage from Belgium and this, except the G thing, because I need to know the origin of that. That's important. But knowing where I'm from, understanding traits of my ethnic group has changed my life, and it's making me think differently about the world and my place in the world. And so I want you to do that. And if you're non-African American, but you've got African American friends, or you think you might have African American ancestry, or you've not been able to fully explain that wavy hair or that wide nose or other traits, and you just always thought that there were secrets that your mom or grandmama said, let me tell you something. There are black people who are walking around who, and I'm not an extremely dark complected person, but my great-great-great-grandfather was full white. Some of you folks with blonde hair and blue eyes, guess what? You got a great-great-great uncle or grandfather who's as black as I am. And so if you ever just wanted to take a look and just to find out what's going on, go for it and do it. But I need you all to just go and Google out, just go to AfricanAncestry.com and begin to take some important steps.
You know what I'd like to do? Can I interrupt?
Please, go ahead. No, go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
On your show?
Yes, you can, Dr. Paige.
What I'd like to do is offer a discount. So we'll create a discount code that is GEE.
Yes.
And so
I like it. I got an African ancestry.
I want to make it black like me.
I was going to say that.
Make it black like me.
Oh, shooky.
So
now, come
I'll
on.
make a code.
That's an AKA right there. That's an AKA. Yes, ma'am.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
It's black like me.
That's the code.
And your listeners, if they go to our site, order a kit, put in the code black like me, then they'll get a 10% discount. Dr.
Paige, thank you for that. I'm going to do a Facebook Live right after this. I'll tag you in it, but I want to say that to the folks that are listening. And we're going to create. My team is going to. They don't know this, but they're looking at me through the window. We're going to create an animated, an animation for advertisement, and we're going to get some nice professional shots that Dr. Paige's office will send us, and a few shots of us. I have a few shots of her with our family in Ghana. We're going to make a little commercial because what I want folks to know is that this is important, and you've been so gracious to help me and my family and to be on this show, and I'm just honored to be able to push this, and I love having that Black Like Me code. So we will do that. Dr. Paige, keep up the good work. Keep putting information out to us. Thank you for doing this important work, and thank you for standing in the space of being the only person on this planet of 7-8 billion people who are doing what you're doing, because it helps us to occupy our space more authentically, more authoritatively, and with a greater degree of integrity. So I've benefited from your work, and I know that those who are listening to this show have also, and those who are going to get this 10% discount by the Black Like Me code are going to understand how important this is as well. So I appreciate you. I hope our paths continue to cross. But thank you for the brilliant entrepreneurial work that you do. Your family, your friends, your associations, your sororities, they must be so proud of you. I know I am. So thank you so much for being a part of Black Like Me in our discussion today. It was rich.
Oh, thank you for having me. This has been a joy, and I receive all of those good things that you sent my way. I really appreciate it, because it's not easy.
Yes, that's true.
Doing this work. It's wonderful and it's fulfilling, but it's also very, very hard. So whenever there are people like you who support us in the community, I'm forever grateful.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. You all, like I've told you, this has been a very, very exciting Black Like Me podcast episode. So a couple things I need you to do, Black Like Me podcast listeners. Subscribe to Black Like Me, folks. Listen to it, share it with folks, because you know people who've been talking about wanting to know where they're from. And this is something that our white allies can do. Help me reach your black friends. One, I want them to subscribe to this. White people, you can't keep all this to yourself, and so you got to share it. So you have African American friends or folks with African ancestry. Get this show to them. Get the link to them. Get the code to them, and let's make America better, the world better, by understanding our own place and part in it. You all, as always, listen, learn, share, grow, and in doing so, we make this world a better place. You all have a great day, and thank you so much for being a part of the Black Like Me podcast family.
Ooh, Black Like Me, yeah.
I want to thank Corey Saffold for creating the music for this podcast, my podcast manager, Tyler Nyland, engineer and editor, Eli Steenlich, my editor, Jeremy Holiday, and a special thank you to WORT Studios, where we record Black Like Me.
Ooh, Black Like Me.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at www.alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.